Hey, what's up, guys? Going over more of the African stuff here. Rhodesian light infantrymen. Now, this is an amazing. I've had this book for a long time. Okay, it's fascinating reading this for, like I keep saying. None of the stuff I'm showing you is like, oh, look into the past. That has no bearing on today. Everything has bearings on today, and you see this stuff was always happening, and its antecedents were happening right in front of your eyes. Okay, if you can see it, if you can read history. Okay, Neil Grant, of course, Peter Dennis. Peter Dennis is a great artist. Okay, the most linked to wargaming. He illustrated. He actually wrote the H.G. Wells Little Wars paper soldier book that I had gone over a while ago. But just the great thing about the Rhodesians, okay, the Rhodesian light infantrymen, the whole history of Rhodesia, the history of Africa. I always recommend, and I'll put a link to it. Adio Africa, okay, one of those Mondo documentaries by those Italian guys, and showing what is happening. Okay, the African colonies, the Europeans are leaving for many different reasons. Okay, the Soviets and the Chinese are you could say stirring up the native people for independence movements. Okay, against colonialism. Okay, um, and it's fascinating the history of where obviously when you think of Rhodesia, right? Ian Smith's country, that was really southern Rhodesia. Northern Rhodesia immediately became Zambia, right? But the whole idea was that Britain refused Southern Rhodesia independence without immediate majority rule. Majority rule, right? Democracy. Well, the Rhodesians were like, whoa, 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 slow down, mate. Well, let's have a phased transition of 15 years. Well, as this is going on, this just this the rebel groups, the independence groups, the nationalist groups, because like I keep saying, your Marxism and your leftism for non-European people just becomes nationalism. Okay, that's all it does. And you see some interesting, the different groups were also ironically ethnic based. You see certain tribes dominated certain ones of these groups. And of course, the Portuguese also left at this time, leaving a huge area open to attack this place from. Okay, and look, and also you see there's a border with South Africa, right? So there's Rhodesia, right? Uh, Roughly the size of California. Africa is huge, huge. It's huge. Right? So now, of course, the 65, Ian Smith, right, announces the unilateral declaration of independence. Hey, doing that. Of course, the British immediately sanctioned them to ban the sale of goods to Rhodesia and the purchase of Rhodesian exports. Now, remember, you still have a small white population. The majority of the Rhodesians, of course, are the sub-Saharan blacks. 5 million of them, okay, and they lived better than many other blacks in Africa. All right, but of course, this is you must have direct democracy. This is from the mother country, okay, and these guys. And remember, Ian Smith, they're not saying no, we're gonna hold on to power. No, they're saying, hey, whoa, let's ease this thing, okay. What I feel about even that is irrelevant. They were willing to do something. Let's not have while they're being surrounded by the enemies who see this. Okay, whatever. Oh, they shouldn't be there in the first place. Whatever. And the majority of the population, the white population of Rhodesia, actually came after the war. It makes sense. Most of them being British and having a pretty good relationship, like I said, with the conservative rural blacks. This is going to be a huge thing because you don't only have the Soviets who have better equipment, but you also have the Chinese-backed ones, okay, who are not as well equipped, but in some ways much better at guerrilla warfare. Okay, Mao was a genius in guerrilla strategy in the Chinese Civil War, having to go against Marxist doctrine pretty much in terms of it's your rural despised farmers, okay, that you want to make good with, where you can attack from, not your workers in the cities. You didn't have many cities. So that tactic was actually pretty effective, basically trying to get on the side of the people, and also punishing them and bullying them. What else? What are you gonna do? It's war. But just looking at the photos, you see these fucking men, right? So this light infantry elite unit, majority of the Rhodesian army are native blacks, right? And as the guy had said, they had made the media at the time the scum. They had sort of made it where it was like it was a racial war, right? The foreign press often depict the Rhodesian conflict as a race war between black and white. This is an oversimplification, okay, as it is now. Okay, but the whole idea is just that, you know, these men, once again, they're fighting ultimately a losing battle. So let's look at this stuff. Let's look at these guys. So most of them were British, but you had pretty much everyone from the Anglosphere in here. You had a bunch of dudes, especially in the mid-70s when the stuff really started to heat up. You start to get guys from like American Marines joining up, guys who fought in Nam. So, and of course, you always have SAS guys, British guys coming into this from the British military to a place where they essentially had been abandoned by the mother country. So you see how bad it was. They say, yeah, cut your long hair, let the skin, get a little time to adjust to the African. Most groups did not and suffered sunburned necks. They're rednecks. And you see the weapons, of course. What is this? Just like South Africa, you can't get British weapons, so they bought Belgian weapons. Remember, the Belgians make great firearms. The FN, right, or the FLA, very really, definitely better than the M16. Oh, people are gonna jump on me in the comments. And of course, a lot of the weapons were homegrown. So you see, just these an elite, right? The pokey drill, strengthening your arms. And the great Peter Dennis Sartre, not just drawing figures. He's good at drawing like the landscape. The tracking team. Originally, the combat changed as as things got a little more heady later. These guys became more mobile. So, and there's the thing. And you see, look, you got Rick Patsaportis. So you got a Greek guy here, right? And of course, obviously, this man here is Pete McNeilage, probably a Scottish guy. And look at I like the camo. It looks a little reminiscent. It's like African, a little reminiscent of the Splitter monster. Look at this dude. I see Van Ziel, Dupoy. These are Afrikaners. So anyway, just getting off here. Let's get to the vehicles they had. Right, you see they had their armored vehicles. They have nothing like the South Africans. They're being sanctioned the whole time. And unfortunately, the South Africans are slowly joining that. Okay, the southern neighbors. But they use things, the armored personnel carriers, they call them the crocodile. They have the same V-shaped hull because you deal with mines, right? But then you have the Lynx. You have like these little propeller airplanes where they would put napalm and surface-to-air rockets on them. So, and of course, the G cars, the famous cars, right? They look now, of course, the G car and the K car, right? These are they look kind of primitive, right? They look like Korean War era, like MASH helicopters. But you could argue that these things were pretty effective and did a lot better than the Hueys did in Vietnam. Right. So look, they had what were they called? I think they originally, right? There's a French design, right? Because they can get French, Belgian help. They're willing to pay money, right? The Alouette, the Jante Alouette, right? Lark, the bird. So the G car, of course, was the troops in it. The K car is where where it was made for these fucking nasty machine guns. And you're gonna see why later when the thing really heats up. These old guys all eventually become paratroopers. Oh, they look like the Fallschirmjägers and the Fujori. So there's some of the equipment. You see these cool helicopters. So now, these guys in combat. I mean, especially in the later combat, man, outnumbered all the time. Did a number on the enemy. Did an absolute number on the enemy. Oh, I'm triggered. And you see too, like I have to get into this stuff, little personal things here, right? What are the conditions of service, right? The barracks, right? The batman. Remember the term batman, right? Your orderly. And you see, you had, of course, you're allowed to like Fanta, Coke, cigarettes. Of course, the beer ration. There was a beer ration. You bet your ass there was a beer ration. After all these days out there in really rough thing, you're gonna want your beer, son. You see some of the fun they had, right? Right. They had the films. They had sometimes films, blue movies. What's a blue movie? Oh, live strippers. Whoa. Limited beer ration. Of course, you got daga, right? Marijuana. Okay, which frequently they would find on the insurgents they killed, and they would just take it. So, And of course, yeah, they were brawling and fighting off duty a lot. Okay, they weren't initially liked in Rhodesia, but as things heated up, you appreciated these dudes. So you see the early army, they looked like the British soldiers, but they developed their own thing later on. And I said the after some, like, they even have a Staghound car, which is an American-made stuff for the British. But anyway, the history gets crazy. You start to see, the groups you see. They captured Robert Mugabe at one point, but there was pressure to let him go and all this. Not pressure coming from the international community. Right? Look, there's the links. Look at that. Looks like something from Magnum PI, but with friggin' weapons on it, son. So, and of course, like I said, you're starting to get now, ironically, you're starting to get these Fireforce operations. Okay, you see how they would do it. They would fly in a pattern. They would have the Dakota, right? They would drop their guys in, but you would also drop guys off with the G cars, okay? You would have the K cars lighten people up, and then the links would come in. So when these guys are running around, these dudes are coming in and basically, it's Fireforce operation, right? To minimize danger of collision, they all flew left-handed orbit so they wouldn't go into each other. And the whole idea was many of the Rhodesians were like, okay, enough of this defensive stuff, okay? We need to attack these bases outside, and that's what they ended up doing. Okay, and this is where you start to get these numbers like you've never seen, okay? They were outnumbered 44-1, always outnumbered, and they inflicted huge amounts of casualties. Right? They wanted to recapture Mugabe, but he got away. So in the field, these guys were undefeated. Okay, but remember, Ian Smith said, well, 15 years. Well, the 15 years was coming up. So in the last days, okay, international pressure became huge. The boycotts, mind you, they're doing this all on a budget, okay, and frequently they can't rely on any outside buying anymore. Right, so they thought, all right, let's lift the sanctions. Let's do it. They negotiated the peace. Right. So once again, the Anglosphere is helping its children. All right, and there was a vote. There was actually a vote. Okay, and the nationalists were not. They didn't want it. Right, they didn't want. Mugabe was the one they didn't want. So they boycotted the elections. All this garbage. Right. Voter intimidation was so widespread, the Rhodesians argued the election should be declared void, all right? But the British governor, Lord Soames, refused to do so. I am British. I must throw my underlings into the pit of hell, because that's what I must do. It's in my blood. As a Viking raider descendant. Oh, okay, relax. And the REL officially ceased to exist on Halloween of 1980, okay? Of course, a lot of these guys left. 60% of the population left. They weren't going to serve Mugabe, who is now the president. So, and this is the casualties. 50 died in non-combat with all the other stuff, and in action, 85 were killed. Of course, last year the wars were the most intense, but this is when they were doing like 35 to 45 to 1 casualty rates on the inflicting them on the enemy. Right. So they did well, of course. The majority rule was granted. Democracy was saved. Must save democracy. And right, the foreign press had gone over that before, and it's interesting too. The language, of course, these are mostly British, English at first, but you have a lot of South Africans in there, so you start to look at these terms, right? So one of the Marine officers, probably after Nam, was say, hey, I might as well keep fighting. Join the RLI. And their own language. What is this? Me and my oaks spot 2 turds. We set our gats. That's right, son. That's where you get gats from. On singing, give them a good revving. One goes down, another takes a gap across the river, but Askimi got grazed by the flat dogs. The floppy has dagger and long bunch of green. So we drop a few chibillies in the night, XA, right? My mates and I see 2 gorillas, set our weapons to full automatic and shoot them up, yeah. One gorilla goes down while the other retreats in haste across the river, but I reckon he got eaten by crocodiles. Searching the body turns up some marijuana and lots of money, so we celebrate with a few beers that night. Ah, cool, bro. Like that. And you see like the 4-man squad. Anyway, you get into all that. It's so much I could go on, but the whole point of this is the aftermath, right? What is this? 60% of the white population immigrated following independence. Surprised they let them, right? Of course, the ones stayed there, okay? And of course, these guys were going to leave. A lot of them would join the South African Defense Force. So ironically, Robert Mugabe's peacetime rule proved more disastrous. No, I couldn't imagine. How could they have been foreseen, Lord Soames? Right, the government blamed, of course, what happens from that? You're gonna see in the future, right? The government blamed the country's woes on the remaining whites for runaway inflation. Now they're inviting them back. Apparently, I don't know how if I'd have to look into how whites that stayed in Zimbabwe, how they're doing. But regardless, these men were what they fought for, will not be forgotten.